Welcome back to the Marianne Hickman Show. Today's episode with Josh Tilley really blew my mind. I met Josh a couple of times at a couple amazing events, and we ran in the same circles of some pretty darn incredible people. And when Josh just told me he was putting on this event, and he had Tim Tebow, he got Ben Kjar, he got Keaton Hoskins, he got Dan Clark, an amazing lineup of individuals, I thought, oh my gosh, how did you pull this off? And as soon as the event was over, I had to talk to Josh and say, what did you do to get those headliners at this event? And I got to tell you, the answer was not what I expected. This was only Josh's second event. And the first event, he put 800 people together. This event was even bigger, even bomber. It really blew me out of the water. But the story of what he, and not just him, but his wife did to be able to bring this event together in the service of youth in his community is something every entrepreneur needs to hear. So if you're in business for yourself, you're running events, or you're speaking, you're not going to want to miss this. Check it out. Okay, I love it. All right. Well, I was stoked about your event. I wish I could have been in two places at once. I was like, I so desperately want to be down there and supporting you. But I had this other engagement. I want you to tell everyone, for anyone that wasn't there or didn't hear about it, which would be hard to do because you had such an A-list of people there. Tell us about the event that you just had a couple weeks ago.
It was phenomenal. It was super, super great. Yeah, the lineup of speakers was unbelievable. I could put a whole podcast together on each of the speakers and my interaction with them and how they believed in what we were doing and what they shared, and even behind the scenes stuff that they did with me or others. That was all spectacular. But we had two silver medalists, we had a national champion, we had a world champion, we had two national champion football players, Heisman Trophy winners, Hall of Fame speakers. The lineup was just crazy. But I do these events for teenagers and their coaches for free, sponsored by business owners who love youth and love sports in their local communities. It was just like a 6-hour conference convention, an opportunity to have a catalyst experience for youth to go and do something. I feel like youth need more, and they need more relevant things. There's a lot of programs for them, but a lot of them are just boring, and a lot of them are just hard to get into a kid. Kids don't care if it's not cool or current or relevant to them. They don't care. So I wanted to bring celebrities and professional athletes on to speak about mentality and how to believe in yourself, and how do I have a goal and a purpose and go after that, and how do I overcome opposition and depression and anxiety and worry and all those things. That's what the whole day was about. So
Now, you dropped a lot of really cool titles, but I want to name drop because you brought in some of the coolest people into your event. I know Keaton was there. I know Ben was there. I know Tim Tebow was there, and a whole
yeah.
bunch of others. Eh, I was thinking about this yesterday. I was jamming with a friend of mine who lives down in Miami, and she and her husband are some of the best souls that you will ever meet. So genuine, so giving, extremely generous, mission driven, just good people. And but I'm learning that those people are so hard to find.
Hmm.
Well, and I won't say hard to find because that's not true. They are rare. I will say they are exceedingly rare. How did you get connected with all of these people?
Um, it's gonna sound prideful, but it's not meant to be. The last 2 years, I've been on a personal growth journey, and it's been crazy, the attraction to like people by me focusing on me. When I became the person I was most concerned about building and lifting and pouring into, then people like that started to find their way into my sphere. And so Tim Tebow is the only one who didn't find its way into my personal circle, and then I was able to reach out to, tell him what I was doing, why I was doing it, and then be willing to come and speak at crazy discounted rates. Tim Tebow was a friend of a friend, knew one of the gatekeepers. So I got connected to the gatekeeper and then built a relationship with the gatekeeper. They moved it up to the next gatekeeper, had a Zoom call with them. They liked what I was doing, so then they were willing to talk to Tim about it. And so that was how that happened. But all the rest were just very organic. I paid to go to an event. I paid to be in a VIP lunch. I met Ben or I met Dan or, I just met them and I tried to enlist them and they loved what we were doing. It's hard to say no when it's youth and
Right.
positivity. It's hard to say no to that. So when they see me as someone who's doing that, they're like, yeah, how can I get involved? What can I do?
Hey, what's up? Marianne Hickman here. Listen, I'm interrupting my own show because I want to give you something. Now, you guys all want to get on more stages. I've got a free resource for you of stages that are just clamoring for guests. They need guests on a daily, weekly, sometimes monthly basis. This is my podcast database. Now, what I'm going to do is have you go to mariannehickman.com/database. Once you put in your information there, I'm going to send this to you totally for free. Open up this database. You're going to click through it, find the next podcast that's relevant to your topic, hit the application button, show up on their podcast, get in front of their people, and share your content. Remember, mariannehickman.com/database. Let's get you unlocked.
Well, instantly in my mind, I'm like, I want to connect you with the people that I know that are in the same world. So I've got a friend, Scott Donnell, who Tony Robbins found him. One of his scouts did.
Uh,
And Scott was on. Have I introduced you guys yet? You and
uh,
Scott? Oh my gosh. So Scott's generated this whole app about financial literacy for kids and families. And I was like, well, I don't know how the crossover would work, but I have to introduce you guys because he would be great on your stage.
yeah.
Fabulous on your stage.
Yeah. I'm finding that it's not hard to find people who want to speak and who have incredible stories that they need to the hard thing to find is the stage, which I know you talk about that all the time, is how do you get on the stages? And I had to just go create the stage. But
Right?
once you have the stage, there are some incredible stories and incredible people that need help getting their story out. And there's people who need to hear that because it's going to change their lives.
Yeah. No, I've thought about that a lot. Is that this common question that I get most often is how do I find a paid stage? And I have found, just like you, that it's easier to create your own and then people see you and people find you. And that's how Scott got started is he put on his own stage and then a Tony Robbins scout found him.
Yeah.
So you put on this entire event. I want to shift gears here for a second and focus on why did you start this for kids? There has to be some inherent story or reason that you turn your heart to the youth and you're like, something's got to change. I want to hear what drove you to that.
Um, I am as ordinary, boring of a person you could find in the world. I have like a normal, good, basic upbringing. Parents were married. They put us in good things. We like life was so good. And I just lived a very, very comfortable life. And looking back, I recognized that while that comfort was good, it created a lack of identity in me. I didn't know. I was just floating. Everything was about how do I get validation from the girls or the athletes or the coaches? How do I get validation? My whole life became about seeking validation from other people. And what I was left to when it was just me was real depressed and real purposeless and just lost. And so I created this event to help the normal average teenagers who aren't, in real tough, troubled circumstances. There's other amazing groups and people that are focused on them. The super freak athletes in high school, there's other great groups focused on them. But everyone else, like the middle 80%, is just me. Like they're just chilling, trying to survive. And I put on this event to help those people have a reason to be extraordinary. And that's what I recognized in me was like, there's an awesome, incredible, motivated person inside. And I didn't know that. So my events are for teenagers. I love teenagers. That's why even my outfit today, I still teach at high school. I teach religion at the high school. And today was wear your jersey to school day. So that's why I've got my jersey on. But I love like my purpose is building teenagers. And I think it goes back to me as a teenager, just feeling like I wish there was someone who would mentor me or help me. And so I'm trying to provide more opportunities for that. But that is my calling is to help teenagers see who they are, what they can do, and how they can do it.
I love that you mentioned that middle 80%. I don't think that's common that people address the largest group of average.
Yeah.
it's exceedingly uncommon. I gotta say, like, you're speaking to my inner teenager. You know, I was like, Michael McLean, I think it was, that wrote the song, "I'm just one of the 90 and 9."
Yeah.
Like, I'm fine, I'm not lost, but I'm just kind of here. I
Yep.
felt the same way. I was living in 9 older siblings' shadows. Everyone knew who my siblings were and then assumed they knew everything about me, and dude, I floated by.
Yep.
I've I rode on the coattails of their intelligence, their brilliance, their accomplishments, and it was just yeah, it just felt average.
Yep. Yep. And I
And you're
think those average teens just turn into 9 to 5, average life. Everything's okay. Nothing's great. And we just make a little extra money, maybe go on a trip here and there, but we just kind of chill. And it's just really lame.
So I was chatting with you, like when we were texting back and forth about your event, I was really curious as to your business model behind this because when you're building a business around speaking, when you're building business around events, there's a huge, not only learning curve, but there's a revenue curve in discovering who your clients are, the business model of it. How are you productizing it, if you will? How are you marketing to people who, the average teenager has a job, but they don't have tons of dollars to invest in their own mentoring. I'm
Yeah.
curious about how you built that up and drew that in.
There's a big story behind that, and it was a very difficult story. Even when you said earlier, you find it easier to build your own stage, that term is very relative, as you know.
Yeah.
Easier is like, it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life to create that stage and what I had to leverage to do it. But I had control over it, which that did make it, easier. But so I decided I was going to do it. I went all in. I had to fund it. The speakers are expensive, even if they give you great discounts. Tim Tebow costs $150,000 if you're going to pay his speaker fee. So I knew I wanted Tim Tebow and I wanted some other speakers. So I started just figuring out, okay, how can I cut costs, make this happen? What could I actually do it for? And I figured I think I could do it for about $160,000 out the door, everything. Okay. So how am I going to fund that? Nobody knew who I was. I'd never done one before. So nobody's going to give me money on some idea. So I decided I was going to personally fund it, which I didn't have like that. I'm a school teacher, so I didn't have just chunks sitting around. So I decided to I had to talk with my wife and said, "What do you think?" And my wife she's the bomb. She's a dreamer. She's a believer. She is anything I want to do that's outside of average. She's like, "Go, do it. I don't care what it is." So I came to her and I said,
Dude.
"Hey, if we leverage everything we've built for 16 years, if we leverage all the debt we can get our hands on, our home equity, we built a home in 2020. We love our home. It's on an acre and it's exactly what we want. If we leverage everything, we can personally fund it. But if it doesn't go well or people don't buy tickets, we got to sell it all and we're going to move into a duplex. And are you okay with that with our 6 kids?" And she's like, "Yep, let's go. Let's do it." So we pulled everything
That
and
takes a certain level of crazy. I just
it
have to say,
is. I think most entrepreneurs have a certain level of crazy,
we
but
have to.
um so we're 13 days away from the first event and I have $20,000 in, and it's looking very much like it's going to be an embarrassment if I do keep it. It's either give money back. I mean, and all of the speakers, it's at least half down is non-refundable. So
Yeah.
I'm going to be out 80 grand no matter what. The venue's already been paid for. So I'm like 90 grand. I could cancel the stage and I could cancel the other half of the speaker. So I would lose 100 grand and give the money, the 20 grand back to people. And yeah, got to sell everything. That's where I was at 12 days before the event. And I
Okay.
had a free call with Renee Rodriguez, like the speaker coach guy. And the idea when I signed up for that call, it was for him to help me with my speech at the event. But then when we got on the call, I was like, "Renee, I don't want to waste your time. I don't need help with my speech. I may not even give it." He's like, "What are you talking about? What's going on?" So I tell him everything going on and I'm going to lose my house. And he says, "Josh, do you still believe in what you're doing?" I was like, "Yeah, I do." And he said, "Okay, then let's do a brainstorming session on how could it still happen? How could it possibly work?" And at the time I was just selling direct to consumer, trying to get coaches to come, parents to come, kids to come, individual ticket sales, $50 for a bleacher seat, $150 for a floor seat, and it just wasn't selling. So he said, "Okay, who cares about teenagers and that has money?" business owners. Okay, would they be willing to pay for 10 tickets, 20 tickets, 100 tickets? And I was like, I don't know. It seems cool, but I don't know. And he said, I think it sounds like a way that might work. So I want you to write out a script. I want you to hang up the phone. I want you to call 100 local businesses. And then you're off. I've never talked to him since then. That was I didn't have funds to pay for a follow-up call. So
Yeah.
like, he doesn't even know what happened since then. But so I
Well, you
hung up the
gotta find a
phone.
way to tell him.
And I hang up the phone with Renee and I get on the phone and just start calling businesses. And I was blown away. They said yes. They started saying yes. So I sold $100,000 worth of sponsorships in the next 12 days and
Josh.
only lost about 35 grand instead of 100 grand. Put on the event. We had 800 people there. It was phenomenal. People's minds were blown. Every adult was like, what is this? You have to do another one. The world needs this. And so that's how the strategy was born. There's still more things to adjust and shift and figure out, how is this a moneymaker? Is it just a passion project? Is this a for-profit? Do we need to transition into a nonprofit? So there's still a lot of question marks, but my entrepreneurship journey so far has been figure out something that you believe in deeply. Why are you uniquely qualified to do it? And then go all the way in. No reservations, no what if it doesn't work, no what, like there is a way to make it happen. You just have to be passionate enough and willing to go and go and go until the solution presents itself. And what I've learned is it will. And it's crazy. It was about 10 days before, so a couple days, and I started having some sponsors happen, and I had another payment due to Tim Tebow, and it was a $35,000 payment to Tim. And if I didn't make the payment within 36 hours, then he was going to back out and I was going to lose my first deposit to him. And I didn't
And your
have it. And
headliner.
yeah, and the reason anyone wants to come. So, I'm talking to my sponsors and nobody's willing, sponsors aren't willing to go that high. And I'm like, okay, my scenario is I've got to come up with $35,000 in 36 hours. Even for me to be in a position where I could ask that question and not think it was hilarious or laughable, like a
It's like
few months
the world's
before that, it'd
best
be
math
like, can you
problem.
find $500 in 36 hours? I'm like, I don't think so. No way. But 35 grand. So I was sitting in my car and I didn't freak out. I didn't start crying. I didn't have an emotional reaction. I was just like, okay, who do I have to be to find $30,000 in 36 hours? Who do I have to be? And then I just tried to be that. So I just
That
started
is, I
calling.
want everyone to listen to that question again. Will you repeat that? Because this question, who do I have to be in order to? Say that again.
I have asked myself that question thousands of times since I took this whole thing on. Who do I have to be to make this work? Even I could even add, I'll go back to the story in a second, but even before this most recent event, it was 2 weeks before my event. On the same day, I had a $15,000 sponsor cancel. I had one person helping me on the back end. She was doing a lot of my logistics stuff. She was diagnosed with stage 3 cancer, had to go into immediate surgery, and my venue canceled all on the same day, 2 weeks before the event. And and you could react a lot of different ways. I told a friend when one of those happened, I was with a friend at lunch and the friend was like, dude, maybe you should cancel. That's like, there's too much going on not in your favor. Also, we knew the ASU BYU football game was going to be on that day. We didn't know a time yet. My school that I coach at, which is the reason why Culture of Champions was born, is my interaction with kids at my school. Their semifinal football game got scheduled at 2 p.m. during the event. The school that I taught out right before that, Thatcher High School, made it to the semifinals. Their game was at 3 p.m. It was like everything happened to conspire against me. And rather than, I've just learned, just if you freak out about it, go have a cry session about it, whatever. You're not, a solution will present itself. I'm so sold on that. And I don't know if that's crazy or delusional, but so far it's happened every single time something has come in the way. If I will stay in my mind frame of, no, this is right, I believe in it, I'm the person for it, and I'm going to move forward, a door will open, a person will appear, something will happen. And so far, almost all of those have been even better than if they would have gone with the original plan. So back to the $30,000. Who do I think it was 35. There's $35,000 in 36 hours. Who do I have to be to come up with that? And I just had a name pop into my mind that I should follow up with. So I was like, all right, I'll just call him. And it wasn't like and ask him for money. I just called him. What are you doing? How are things going? Yeah, Josh, I've seen on Instagram, you got this going on, you got that going on. That's so cool. Why are you doing it? We just had a conversation. And at the end of the conversation, he said to me, what's the number one thing you would need right now? And I was like, that's a funny question because what I need is more than I could ask anyone to give. And he was like, well, what does that mean? So I told him the story. He was like, I need $35,000. And he's all, huh, I'll give it to you.
Shut up.
And I was like, wait, what did you just say? And he's like, I'll give it to you. And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, I'll just give you a personal hard money loan. Here's a percentage. And he's like, how long are you going to need it for? And I was like, worst case scenario, everything bad happens. I could pay it back to you in 6 months. And he's like, oh yeah, easy. I'll just take your word on it. I know what you're doing. I think it's amazing. And then he's like, actually, I have a friend who just asked me if I knew anyone looking for a hard money loan, and he'd be willing to offer you a lower percentage even. So go call him. And if it doesn't work out, call me back.
So he
And I was like, okay.
bypasses himself on a higher return on investment and said,
Yeah.
hey, I've got this other guy. That's a heart of gold. You keep that in your back pocket.
So I call the other guy and he's like, oh, that sounds like a great idea. Yeah, I can do that. And I'm like, what the, like I found 2 people now. Then I got a phone call from one of my sponsors and he's like, hey, I'm in at this amount of money. What would it take to be your biggest sponsor? What would it take to be your title sponsor? And I didn't have even that. I didn't have that. It was just like, I'm going to do these $15,000 sponsors and have a group of title sponsors. And just because of what was going on, I said, $35,000 is my title sponsor fee. And he was like, all right, let's do it. So within a day, I had $100,000, which I wasn't going to take those loans. I called both of my loan guys back and I was like, hey, this is crazy, but I found the money. Thank you. I'll be calling you later for other things I have going on.
Yeah, yeah.
But I got a sponsor, no interest paid for $35,000, wired it to Tim and everything was good to go. So I think that was probably the biggest thing that happened that made me realize anything you want is there. The framework that I use, that I train with, that I teach now, that I've put into language, everything I've experienced is just identity, purpose, and battle plan. And if you know clearly your identity, and that's like deep, you know who you are. And then my purpose, I'm going to put this event on to bless hundreds of youth. And I'm going to do it with these, like I had a clear, specific purpose. And then you just go. And the battle plan, like I thought about other words like a game plan or all these other phrases I could have used. And battle plan just kept coming back to what it was because it's war. Like it is a battle every single day. But if you stay in the battle and your purpose is clear and you know why you're doing it with your identity, miracles, like that's what I call them. Actual miracles will happen to make success happen.
So you used a couple of words a second ago that I've heard used by Keaton. I've heard Gary Vee use them. I've heard these headliners, all these title names have used this word delusional. And that's poo-pooed upon in common culture, not in the people that listen to this podcast, but delusional. I'm under a delusion. And when I break apart that word, when I put on my nerd glasses and I'm like, okay, I'm seeing something that doesn't exist. You have to.
Yep.
I think you have to be delusional in order to create something that doesn't exist because you have to see it exist first.
Yep. Yep. And I think you have to do a lot of work to get yourself there. If you aren't that way, it's okay. I wasn't that way, but I'm so that way now where my belief in myself right now is so insane. There's nothing that could happen that would make me think like, oh no, I can't do it then. Like there's nothing, but it's come through this process of coming up against difficult things and believing that I'm going to figure it out and figuring it out. And then that confidence began to grow. And that like, I believe in the human spirit, the human like growth and progression. It's enabled. It's available to every single person, but you have to become the person who can tap into that and make things happen. But delusion is real. Anybody who finds out what I leveraged to put on an event for teenagers with Tim Tebow is just like, you're what, like it delusional. That's all it is.
Well, and then your
So, and
wife's
luck
backing you up on it. Like she's
yeah,
completely
that's the other
delusional too.
delusional part is I married somebody who was willing to go along with my delusions. But the cool thing is she's just as delusional in what she is doing right now too. She set a goal that she wanted to read 400 books this year, and I thought it's kind of a waste of time. You should go build
Oh,
some businesses instead. We have a lot of other things going on. She's like, no. She listened to a podcast where it said the average CEO reads, I think, 24 books, like 2 books a month. And so she was like, that was her first goal. And then she listened to 10X from Grant Cardone. She's like, I'm gonna double it. And then she was like, oh, I'm gonna do 48. And then she kind of started losing momentum. And then she heard one of her other books, it was like, you got to 10X that goal. So she was like, okay, 400 books. So she's at like 300 personal development, entrepreneurship, business books this year. And she's created 2 companies because of all of it, which is crazy too. But it's real. Delusional is a real thing, and it's important.
oh my gosh, my jaw's on the floor. I just saw, I think it was Alex Hormozy that posted that Costco is taking hard books out of their shelves. Like they're not going to stock hardcover physical books anymore. And the comment on it was, you now have the upper hand if you continue to do something that others are unwilling to do.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think it necessarily has to be just reading the hardcover. I know that I can get through 400 books a lot faster if I listen to them, while
Yeah.
I'm driving and so forth. But this competitive advantage is not just digesting and reading literature, but you've got a recipe here. You've got a recipe for asking for help. And this is something that drives me knuckin' futz about entrepreneurs in general, is especially in the world that I'm in. I see it too often, and at the risk of becoming what I'm describing, I just want to say that I am full of plot twists and potholes as far as entrepreneurs and business go. But I see there's this feeling that speakers have specifically. You stacked on top of that entrepreneurism of ego. And the ego is this facade that we wear to protect ourselves from embarrassment. And when the ego is present, we cannot learn anything. We excuse me, we don't ask for help. We don't learn anything, and we present ourselves as if we have it all figured out when we don't. And I think that is such a thorn in our side, and it's honestly repulsive to me. I've got a friend who's writing a book on how to spot a con artist. And he
Hmm.
said, you can have a spectrum, right? Just because someone has a symptom doesn't make them a con artist. But he said, when you start to stack several of these things on top of each other, I would red flag, stay away. And he says, through his experience in billions of dollars of business, one of the hallmarks of that is someone who always says everything is rosy and everything is going great and everything is fine and everything is functioning and all fire cylinders are firing. And in my experience in business, that has never been the case. And I don't want to erode the powerful words of manifestation that we have, because I believe those are powerful, but also being willing to openly address and ask for help is this duality that we as business owners, as event facilitators, we ride that line all the time.
Yep. That's just a big ol' yes. It's yeah. And
Do you find that
it's
with teens as well? Do you encounter that at all?
um you encounter everything with teens. But yeah, I don't even know where to I don't even know where to yes, kids are fake. Everybody's fake. I think that everybody wants to be real. And when we give them an opportunity or a platform to be real, they usually will. Like kids want to be vulnerable. And I think adults want to be vulnerable too, but they think that there's some kind of credibility that comes in when they aren't, which is silly. And I think everybody's got to deal with that themselves. But I found a lot of power in being open about that and that it hasn't worked out. Even this event that went amazing because of there was 5 state games that day, the ASU BYU football game. We had 900 people pre-register for the event, and I had out another 9,000 tickets in coaches and players' hands in the state of Arizona, and only 650 people came to it. So we had
Wow.
400 seats on the floor that were all full. We could have fit another 1,000 people in the bleachers, and there was only 200 people in the bleachers. And at the very beginning, it was like, I was fighting feelings of embarrassment a little bit. I was fighting, like, I've told these sponsors that they can count on having 1,400 people there. There's only like, so the sponsors are going to be upset that there's not as many eyes. And so I was actually in the back room in the green room, and I went up to Dan Clark, who's one of the top 10 motivational speakers of all time. And so I go
Love
up
the
and
guy.
I'm like, Dan, I need a motivational speech right now. Like, the room's empty.
You
Give
called
me a
on him.
speech. So he puts his hands on my shoulders. He's tall. He's like 6'5". Puts his hands on my shoulders and he's like, Josh, I promise you, the people who are supposed to be here, that you are supposed to serve, are here, and focus on them. And he said some other things too. But as I went out to get my speech, I got on stage and I said, hey, I want everyone to look around for a second. What do you notice? And you could see on people's faces and what they're mouthing, and they're like, empty seats, empty seats, empty seats. And like, it was this pretty cool moment for me, because I was creating this speech as I was giving it. And I just said, what would happen in your life if all you do is focus on the empty seats? If all you ever look at is the empty seats in your life, or the emptiness of your marriage, or the flaws and faults of your kids, or your clients, or whatever, like, that's so trash. So I told everyone in the room, like, I want you guys to focus on, you are here and you're supposed to be here. And me, as the host of this whole event, I don't care who's not here. I care about who is here. And it's actually shifted my mentality in a lot of things. I coach a lot of sports too. I'm coaching a 6th grade team and an 8th grade team, and helping with the varsity team right now. And even as a coach or as a parent, we have a tendency after a game, when you get in the car with your kid and you're like, hey, you know, this, and this. I know how, well, that's how it was for me. After every game, you get in the car with your dad and he has all these things, and I didn't want to do it. But I've noticed, if I focus on what they are doing, and they have. Yesterday we had a game. Let's see. Saturday there was a game, and my 8th grade daughter, she's like, Dad, can it just be me and you in the car on this ride home? This is after the game,
No.
and I'm the coach. That's so uncommon for
Yeah,
the
that's
coach's
exceedingly
kid
rare.
to want to talk to their parent. And she's like, Dad, will you just tell me, what are you seeing? What, like, she's the one opening it. And I've just found that when you focus on the haves and what's there, instead of the empty seats, the cool thing is, the empty seats end up getting filled anyway. And my daughter, is recognizing the things she could have done without me having to call them all out. So anyway, I know that was kind of a long, weird, not direct way to answer your question, but I do think there's a lot of fakeness and a lot of focus on lack. And it's okay if you don't have it all together. And it's okay to focus on what you do have all together, and things are going to work out. I am kind of like, I'm not a Pollyanna that everything's always right, but I believe I can figure out what is right in anything. So
Yeah. I think that's a really cool approach. And I hope every speaker that has ever put on an event heard what you just said, rewinds it and plays it on repeat, and don't focus on the empty seats. It's whenever and was this your first event? I know it's the first event of this series, but was this your very, very first event?
In May was the first event I put on, and then this was the next one in November.
Okay. I thought you had one more before this. So when you put on this event, I was like, holy crap, Josh is freaking killing it, dude. Like, look at what he's done. Look at where he's going. Look at what he's producing. I know in my soul that I was like, I want to be a part of that. I want to
Yeah.
be a part of what he's doing. I want to help propel his message out there. I mean, you're serving such a beautiful audience, and these kids need you, and they need the other
Yeah.
people that are in front of you. Anyway, so it inspired me. And when I'm working with all of the students that are aspiring for the same thing, I hope what if you're listening that you can hear in this is not just the principle of 10x is better than 2x, but look at what 10x does to you as a person. You know, this May event, I don't know, remind me how big that one was when you first started, your very first event.
800 people.
It was, oh my gosh, even then, 800 people at your very first event, and then you're doing it again and you're doing it again. Tell me where you see this going. What's I know that you probably have endless possibilities, but what's a pinnacle milestone for you that you're shooting for?
Um, 7,000 people at Grand Canyon University, and Michael Jordan's there.
Shut up. I
Yeah,
just got goosebumps, dude.
somehow that's gonna happen. I think there's going to be that was what I was looking at as a direct line to get there. I think what I learned from this last event was I need to make some shifts in the actual business plan. I need to create some different strategic partnerships to get bigger names as far as sponsors go, and more connected to organizations that can get youth to come to it, because getting it to the coaches and to their players isn't the best way to get them there. So there's some re-strategizing and refocusing. Every single person who comes though, their answer is more of this has to happen. Even Bill Scheffenhauer, who I heard speak at an event, and I was like, that's the guy who I want to be the MC for my next event. I MC'd the first one, and Keaton was like, dude, you can't be MCing your own events. And I'm like, but I love it. I want to. I know how I want it to feel. I want to be the guy to do it. And I feel like I'm good at it because I know how I want it to feel. And I was just like, no, I have to do it. And then I heard Bill host an event, and there was a moment that he had something happen, and it was like he could do it. He could be a Culture of Champions event host. So anyway, when he saw what we were doing, he comes to me backstage and he's like, Josh, this has to happen more. This needs to go on the road. This needs to be in every town in America. Like, this thing has to get bigger. This is ridiculous. So there's so much good and so much potential in it. And everyone who comes is infused and inspired by what it is. And I need to figure out a couple more shifts to make it get to that next level.
Yeah, I'm curious on the business back end model of it, and I want to stay connected as that grows, because this deserves to be sustainable. There's no reason why it shouldn't be. When you think about what the companies that market to kids that are under 18, right? We're talking big companies. These are Mattel. I'm thinking toy brands first off. I mean, these are people that target kids in their ads and marketing and all of that. And I'm like, okay, if they're able to enroll their ideal audience is not necessarily their purchasing audience,
Yep.
right? Their purchasing audience is the
Their
parents.
parents. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. So when you're building this, maybe you already have a concept. Do you feel like your audience is your purchasing audience, or your purchasing audience is different from your consumer?
Yeah, right now, what's been proven is the purchasing audience is businesses. And I don't know if
Yeah.
that can shift, but so far the proof is that is the purchasing audience. And so even some parents were coming, but it's such a like there's all the money in is sponsorship. So even if I get 3 or 4 sponsors and I get in 10 grand, to turn that right back into advertising is tough when my speaker fees are 100 grand. Like the process is not a normal business. Advertise product, purchase product, revenue coming in, turn that back into, allocate the resources. It's just strictly sponsor money in, and then what do you do with it? And the sponsor money coming in isn't generating anything else. And even the event isn't generating anything else. So that's another thing too I'm looking at is, how do I create courses, or how am I going to create, something that can start to bring in some revenue that I can then allocate to advertising, to making it bigger, to getting in front of more parents' eyes. So I still have a ton of questions, and I'm excited to figure it out.
I love your approach on that. My mind is spinning. I'm like, colleges, their target audience is also kids,
Yep.
right? Especially if you will, the average, the middle 80%, like you're talking about. So in my head, I'm like thinking federal grants, sponsorships, college funding, like all of this stuff. I don't know. Whatever I can do to help that along, I want to, because I believe in your cause and I believe in what you're doing.
Thank
So,
you.
and not just in this one massive culminating event, because with you that's going to happen. I have zero doubt of it. But even beyond that, the scalability, the reach that you have, I mean, there's no
It is
reason it shouldn't
cool
grow.
because I do think, and you hear this in books a lot too, but creating something that's bigger than you, like having a why that's bigger than yourself, and even to put language to it. So the culture of champions, it's been so cool for that to start becoming a thing. So even if you go follow Dan or Ben or Bill, they've posted stories, and what they talk about is culture of champion. And so when I'm watching them now talk about, I went to this event, culture of champions, and what it is, and like, oh man, I just goosebumps, because it's growing without me too, which is sweet. That the idea of it, like I want to create a culture of can I create a culture of champions in my family, in my football team, in my business, in my whatever, in my church group. I want to create a culture of champions where we're just growing them. They're just coming out of them. So.
Oh man, I've got that Mulan phrase, popping out of the snow like daisies.
Yep, exactly. Exactly like that.
Oh, well, okay. So when's your next event? I got to know because you've got something launching in January. I want everyone that's listening to know about it.
The next big event is not scheduled yet. I'm in discussions with Steve Young's foundation to potentially do a Forever Young Culture of Champions event with Steve Young. So that would probably be the next big one. And I would guess it would be it's gonna be after the summer. It'll be 6 months to a year out is when that next one is. So yeah, the big thing that's coming up next is just more of this like dialing in training. Even if I don't launch a program because of the events, I have a ton of parents reaching out saying, "Will you help my kid? How can you help my kid? I know the event was amazing and that was life-changing. My kid has 2 pages of notes and wouldn't get on their phone, which everywhere else I can't get them off their phone, but they were glued. Will you train my kid? Will you help my kid?" So I have an online course I'm working on. I have some one-on-one mentoring stuff that I'm doing. So right now that's kind of the focus is helping the youth who went to the event or other youth that hear about it, doing everything I can to enlist those, not enlist them, to help them become champions in their life and help the parents serve the kids. That's usually when a parent comes to it and they see their kid responding, they're like, wait a second, I don't see that very often. Like my teenager does not respond to stuff. So whatever you're doing, we need more of that. So that's the focus right now. And I'm doing free content all the time. My Instagram, I post tips for parents, tips for businesses, help for kids. And so people can connect with me through there. But there is, and you've probably heard of this, but me and Keaton Hoskins, the muscle, who does the Limitless Society, we did just launch Limitless Society for Youth, and we do a free Zoom call every Monday, and that's available to any youth 13 to 17 who wants to just hop on a free call and hear me and Keaton teach about some of these same principles. So anyway,
Well,
that's what's
I'll
going
drive
on.
all my teens to that. If you have a link, send it over to my email. And I'll put it in the show notes so that people can get enrolled in that and be part of that. Because I've got teenagers up the wazoo. I've got 6 kids. I'll send them over to
Yep.
that 100%. There's something huge happening. I think we all felt it. It manifested in a very political form this year, but I feel even beyond politics, there's a gigantic energy 360 or 180 rather that's happening where we have seen our teens almost mentally abducted by the need for validation, by the need to uh, have their egos stroked, by the need to be seen and acknowledged and validated externally.
Yeah.
And it is causing young adults to become this. And we've seen it happening for years. I think it started as seeds when we were in second and third grade, and now it's manifested into something that is beyond destructive. And conservatively, and again, not to take such a political stance, but I will say that people like you and me tend to not be the one to go out and pick fights, if you will. And I know now, it's time for people to say, no, it's time for us to say something. It's time for us to use our voices. It's time for us to call stuff out on the carpet and pull the mask off the inauthenticity and help people realize that your validation, your sense of power, everything that you've talked about, Josh, comes by being who you are. It comes by
Yep.
being an inherent son or daughter of God, and it comes by being the purest form of yourself.
Yep. In Ben's speech, um, he does the phrase, "I choose me." And in the event, actually, I'll tell you what happened at the event. So me and Tim Tebow are doing an interview on stage. That's the final speech is me interviewing Tim. And we're sitting on chairs, we're facing the audience. And as it's coming to a conclusion, it's been really, really powerful. It's been really good. And as it's coming to a close, I just start having an idea. which I was nervous about because his contract is crazy. Like what you can't. And this is my second time with him. I'm kind of developing a relationship with him and his team, so they're trusting me more. But still, I wanted to create something, and so I was like, "Hey Tim, are you willing to go off the cuff a little bit?" And he looks at me kind of nervous, but he's like, "I'll go with you, dude. What are we doing?" So I'm like, "All right, hey, stand up." So me and Tim stand up, and then I turn to the audience and I'm like, "Hey guys, I need you to stand up and crowd around the stage as tight as you can." So all those 600 people, they come crowd in around this stage as tight as they can. I'm like, "Okay, you guys know one of the things Tim Tebow is known for is his locker room speeches." So I'm like, "Tim, we're in the Florida Gator locker room right now and it's halftime. And everyone in this room is about to go back out onto the battlefield, back out onto the field of life for the second half. And you are our team captain right now, Tim. Tell us." And so it was just a super, super cool moment. And as that finished, I felt like, man, if this really was the locker room, we would go right into the chant, whatever that, like our team cheer, whatever that is. But we don't have a culture of champions chant or cheer. So then I look down and I see Ben is still sitting there, which Ben took us all through these I am statement chants. So I'm like, "Ben, get up here." So Ben jumps onto the stage. And I'm like, "Ben, you know what time it is?" And he's all, "Oh, dude, I know what I'm picking up what you're stepping in." So we got Ben in the middle, me on one side and Tim on the other side. And then Ben starts hyping and yelling, "I am a victor. I choose me. I inspire possibility." I can't even remember all the phrases, but and we're all chanting, yelling, but that phrase, he kept going over that phrase lots of times. "Now I choose me. Now I choose me. Now I choose me. Now I choose me." And like the more you think about it, now I choose. There's just I think that phrase is ridiculously important. And even after that same drive that I have with my daughter after the basketball game, she said, "Dad, do you remember at Culture of Champions when Ben had us chant, 'Now I choose me'?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I remember." And she said, "I think during the game today, I realized what he meant." And so I'm
No
like,
way.
"Yeah, tell me, what do you," and this is a 13-year-old girl. And she said, "I think when I'm in the game, I'm constantly," we have a player who's very good. She's probably gonna go on to play D1 basketball, even though right now she's only 8th grade. She's so good. And she said, "I think I've been choosing her. Like, I'm worried about what does she think about me playing, and I'm constantly making sure she is approving of what I'm doing, or that if she tells me I made a good pass, I feel so good about myself. Or if she gets on me for a turnover, I feel so crappy about myself." And she said, right in the middle of the game, I realized I was choosing her. And then she got I'm gonna get emotional. And she got emotional. She was like, "Dad, from now on, I choose me." And I was just like, that is what I'm talking about. That's why I'm doing Culture of Champions events. Like, I want teens to figure out that they are the most important person in their life. And a few moments of motivation, a few tools and keys and an experience where they feel that they really are important, they're going to do miracles. This same daughter said to me, "Dad, you know what I want to do?" Like, "What do you want to do?" She said, "I want to do something that everyone in the world hears about." I was like,
Dang, girl.
what in the heck is going on with this kid? So anyway, just when you pour belief into a kid and help them see what's possible, I think all of the stereotypes and the things we say about teenagers kind of is true because they're lost behind this mask. And if we can help get through that mask, you'll be blown away at what those kids are capable of and what they can believe about themselves if they're just given a little bit of belief and tools. Miracles, more miracles.
Well, we are those kids. We
Yep.
grew up from
That kid is
being those
right
kids,
inside of you. Yep.
right? Like that's
Yep.
gosh, man, I feel humbled and grateful every time I think about another birthday that's passed or whatever. And people have this weird thing about being old, and I'm like, isn't that the point? Like we want to live and we want to. Aren't we trying to preserve our life in
Yeah.
everything that we do? Like it's an honor to age. But this 5-year-old version of me is still here, and this 12-year-old and the 14-year-old, it's still here, and she's relying on me to fulfill her dreams.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I just have to say, dude, I'm grateful for what you're doing because I've found some truth in the phrase, "You're never a prophet in your own country," and to have proximity and, uh and the influence of people who are doing what you're doing for my not only myself, but especially for my children when I can say, "No, look what Josh is doing. Look what Ben is doing. Look what Keaton's doing." And I'm aggregating very purposefully because your village, it does take a village, but your village will raise your kids.
Yeah.
Whoever your village is will raise your kids. So I'm honored to have people like you in my life, in my community, and even though that we're a state away, even the time that we get to spend together in person, and more importantly, when I can show my kids that look what Josh is doing and look what Ben's doing, and it's you're saving lives. There's no two ways about it. You're saving lives, and I know it hasn't come to a very deep conversation about suicide and maybe that's not the crux of why you're doing what you're doing, but I know that it will if it hasn't
Yeah.
already, and it
Yep.
probably has.
Yep. I know that it has. Yeah. And like you said, that's not the purpose, but any kind of any kind of lack of self-esteem is going to lead to stuff.
Yeah.
And then the pinnacle, or whatever the bottom side of the pinnacle is when that happens. And so yeah, I'm fighting for all of it. Then, and every step that leads all the way down that deep, all the way up to when you wake up in the morning and you say, I don't want to go to school today. Like, even that, like, I want to start there with those kids. Like,
Yeah.
when you wake up in the morning, you say, I just want to go to bed. I'm too tired. I'm too sleepy. I don't want to do this. I'm crank. Like, let's start the battle right there and help a kid realize what they can become. So you don't have to save them from clear the heck over in the darkest dark that they are, which I hope things can help bring them back. But let's also work on this group that's over here and send them this way. And then they can also be the ones that reach down and pull those kids up.
You're putting good content out there, and that's more than just a, "Hey, Instagram looks better." It's I mean, you and I both know what's hitting our kids through social media, and I think that the more gosh, I can't put it any other way, and I know this sounds cheesy, but the more true warriors, you call it a battle, we're the warriors. The more warriors that bring light with them, the better.
Yep.
And you're putting a lot you're putting everything on the line to do it, and from one parent to another, I have to say thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I accept that too. Like, I know the work that it takes. And I accept that because I hope it inspires others to do it too. It's not like I am something special. Everybody is seeing the same things that I'm seeing. I just decided to risk and try to do something about it. And there are a lot of great people doing things. And hopefully, like you said, we can inspire more and more people to be a voice, be vocal, share why you see that. And not just to be, there's this teenager in our community right now. He has his t-shirt company and it's called Create or Complain. And he talks about it all the time. And he has stickers all over the place. He's got t-shirts, but you can either create a change or you can complain about the change. We are, as adults, really good at talking about how crappy teenagers are, or how crappy politics is, or how crappy the world is, or you can create something. And so,
Oh, that's awesome. I need to get to know this kid. I was just chatting with a speaker. She's going to be speaking on the Turning Point stage in a couple weeks. I mean, you're right next door to it. I'm sure you know about it. 5,000 people are going to be there, and her entire keynote hinges on that. On I
mm,
was tired of complaining about it. I've created something new instead.
I
So
love it.
I want to meet this kid. I want to meet the kids that in your world that are extraordinary. I want to put them on my stages if they're ready for that. And let's do more good.
Yep. There's lots of good people out there.
Well, Josh, thank you so much. I'm honored for you to be here. I'm going to put your Instagram handle in the show notes so that anyone on social media, you can go check it out. Any final words for the special people that are listening today?
That's it's weird that I have no idea what to say, but I felt the chills with the opportunity. Like, what is the closing thought? I would just say, it's actually the phrase that came to me, of why I started this whole thing 2 years ago. And I was at the Limitless Society event, Limitless Arena event, and Jim Quick was speaking. And he didn't give a powerful speech. It wasn't an emotional speech. It wasn't moving, but he said a phrase. And the phrase hit me like nothing I've ever been hit with before. And he said, there is a version of you that's patiently waiting.
Mm.
And for whatever reason, my heart was gonna explode. And at that time, I was physically not healthy. I was much more overweight than I am right now. My finances were unhealthy. My relationships were pretty good, but nothing like I was real excited about. I thought my marriage was a lot better than my wife thought her marriage was. Like there was just things that were like everything was just okay. But when he said that phrase, there is a version of you that's patiently waiting, I knew I needed to do something to become something. So all of everything I've done has happened since that moment. So I think every single person needs to be looked in the eyes and look themselves in the eyes and realize there is a version of you that's patiently waiting, and it's time to wake them up. It's time to get after it.
I can't even add to that. That's perfect and that's beautiful. I remember one day you said, I can't remember if it was something that you said to me directly or if I heard you say it from stage, when every teenager needs to be looked in the eye and hear the words, "I believe in you."
Yeah.
And I hope those of you that are listening, I want you to show this to your teenagers, and I want you to look yourself in the eye before you go to bed and when you wake up tomorrow morning and say the same thing, because age has nothing to do with your development. Absolutely nothing to do with it. We hope that you get more practice in developing yourself than in tearing yourself down, which is why Josh is hitting it up with the teenagers, but we all deserve it.
Yeah.
So Josh, thank you once again. Whatever I can do to be of support, please loop me in, because this
You're
is
welcome,
something that
and
I
thank
believe in.
you. No, even just coming on your stage right here, your podcast, I'm grateful for the opportunity, and I do hope people will send this out to hear this message, but also just to connect with you more and what you're doing and the people that you're helping is just it's awesome to connect with people who are doing something about the problems they see. So I honor
Amen.
you for what you're doing.
I received that. Thank you. Friends, thank you for being here on this episode of the Marianne Hickman Show. Remember to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and we will see our next episode drop next week, right on Sunday.
Hey, what's up? Marianne Hickman here. Hey, listen, I hope you enjoyed that episode. We have some pretty amazing speakers on my podcast, and of course, more to come. If this is something that you enjoyed, guys, smash the like button, smash the subscribe button. You guys know what to do. I love your comments, and I respond to every single one of them personally, not a bot or an agency. So if this is something you're enjoying, tell me about it. Tell me your gold nuggets. I want to hear from you. But here's the most important thing I want you to laser in on. I told you about the podcast database. You've probably seen me post about it all over social media. I want to make sure that you get it. So here's what I want you to do. Go to mariannehickman.com/database. Once you put all of your information in there, I'm going to send you the document. You request access to it. Boom, it's unlocked. Once you're in there, my rule of thumb is to apply to 10 podcasts a month. It's very digestible. It's very easy to do. And the database gets updated twice a week. So I want you constantly checking back in there for the next podcast that fits your audience. Thank you for being here. Much love to you, and we'll see you in the next episode.